Alright, so what I have here is a caliper pin that's seized inside of the caliper. So one of the things that I did is, you can see I sprayed a liberal amount of PB Blaster in there to try to get some of that lubrication down into the rust area and break it up. And what I'm going to do now, I was able to, when I first had it, it was completely seized. What I was able to do is take a vise, put the edge of the caliper pin into the vise and tighten it down. Okay, now that it's tightened down in here, I'm going to keep spraying this area where the pin goes into the caliper with PB Blaster. And I'm going to take propane, or if you got acetylene, I want to heat this area so that this expands and gets some space around that pin. And I've been doing that slowly, and when I first started it wasn't able to move at all, but now I'm able to move it about 90 degrees. There's still a lot of resistance in there, but keep working it back and forth, and as you're turning it, that rust is churning up with the oil and it's getting it more and more free. And once you get it to that point where it's pretty loose but you still can't pull it out, then we're going to go to the next step. Okay, so what I did was I moved this pin further into the vise, and I'm trying to create a real tiny gap right here between the vise and the edge of the caliper. And then I'm going to take a cold chisel. This is a small one that I have, but you can do a bigger one if you want. And I'm going to put it into that space right here, and I'm going to hammer down, and that's going to act like a wedge, and it's going to drive that pin out of there. Now I only have two hands to record with, so I'm going to pause it and do it a little at a time. Alright, so from that original gap I was able to hammer it in that much, and you can see that it moved quite a bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the vise, remove it, slide it back a little deeper, create another small gap in here, keeping it with a wedge. If you do this while you're heating it here, if you're able to heat this at the same time, that's going to help tremendously. You absolutely have to have some kind of lubricant in there. If you try to do this when it's just fully rusted and you haven't tried to prepare it at all, it's probably not going to work. But between lubrication, heat, and the hammering, the three should get you your result. All right, it's pretty loose at this point. It's actually so loose at this point that I can just take a hammer now, and instead of using the wedge, I can just hammer this way and be able to drive the pin out. There it goes. Okay. One other thing you can do, if this isn't working for you, another little trick you can do as well involves a socket. Let me show you how that's going to work. All right. So if it's not coming out, an alternative method that sometimes works involves taking a socket. So what I want to do is I want to find a deep well socket whose opening is a little bit bigger than the entire top of the caliper pin, and I'm going to slide that down over the boot all the way until it's touching metal here. Okay, so now on the top, what you want to do is you want to find out what thread your caliper bolt is. I believe this is a 10mm fine thread. Get one that's long enough to get all the way from here to the top of this socket, and you're going to put that in. You're going to screw down into the caliper pin, and then as you start turning this bolt, it's going to be pulling that up inside the socket. The socket's going to be pushing down on the caliper, and it's going to act like a puller, and that also is another way to possibly get that pin out. Hope that helps.